And welcome into the MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. My name is Michael. Appreciate you guys taking some time out and enjoying some baseball content here on about a week away until the MLB trade deadline. A lot of great baseball each of the last two nights. The AL wildcard race continues to get closer and closer and closer. And honestly, the division races are starting to heat up too, because the division leaders right now aren't exactly running away with things. The Houston Astros have done a nice job over the past few days taking care of business in the last parts of their series against the Mariners, and then of course against the Diamondbacks, weathering the Isaac Paredes injury so far. But he's going to be out a significant period of time. Manager Joe Espada was telling the media before the game today. Now, how long he'll be out, I would guesstimate we're probably looking around a month. Probably looking beginning of September, maybe mid-September when they get him back. And, I think that's fairly reasonable what to expect. With that being said, they were already looking for a left-handed hitting second baseman. Bryce Matthews has certainly picked up the slack offensively with Paredes' injury. Maybe they don't target a left-handed hitting second baseman now. Maybe they target just another bat, period. They've been needing an outfielder pretty much since the start of the season. Maybe they go back to that direction as well. But let us know in the comment section where you guys think the Astros will ultimately add their bat here ahead of the trade deadline. Got so many of you guys already in the chat. Michael, John, Sean, Sarah, Harley, Ethan, Michael again. Really appreciate you guys joining us this evening. Let's go ahead and get into some of this chat first, and then we'll get into some of the news of the day. Is there any news on a trade deadline for the Dodgers? Dodgers are still going big game hunting here at the deadline. With the injuries that they've suffered and poor performance that they've suffered out of the bullpen recently, it sounds like not only are they targeting an elite bullpen arm for themselves, they're targeting bullpen period. That bullpen has imploded many times over the past month. They did so again today, but were able to pull it out against the Twins, I believe. I think they ended up winning 4-3, but that game should not have been that close. Honestly, the Twins had nothing going all game long, and then Kirby Yates came out for the eighth and had nothing. So we'll have to see how the rest of this deadline goes for the Dodgers, but I'd say they add at least one impact bullpen arm. We're talking an eighth inning setup guy at minimum, most likely a closer type. We're talking Duran, Clase, any of the top closers that might be out there. Figure them as logical fits for the Los Angeles Dodgers ahead of the deadline. All right, John, are the Yankees going to be aggressive at the deadline? Abso-freaking-lutely. It's in the Yankees' DNA to do that kind of a thing. It's just the way the Yankees are wired. I mean, you're in a very tough division. Four teams basically vying for playoff potential right now. The Dbacks, or not the Dbacks, the Rays anyway, are just outside of the wild card picture, but the Red Sox are right there. The Yankees obviously aren't winning the division yet. The team in front of them, the Toronto Blue Jays, certainly will be aggressive at the deadline. And with Jazz Chisholm basically going over to second permanently, I'd expect them to add a third baseman. I know they're looking for starting pitching. We'll see who they ultimately add. I do think they'll fill all three of their needs at the deadline. Sean, is this the second time you were live today? It is. We did a live earlier around 3:30 up till the 5 o'clock hour, kind of doing a lot of different trade talk as well. Talking a little bit about Dylan Cease and the rumors around him that the Padres have at least initiated talks with other teams, not other teams initiating with them on Dylan Cease. Tells me there's momentum on the Padres side of things to offload his salary to be able to bring in future assets while still remaining competitive in a tight race for the NL wildcard. Now, the NL isn't nearly as competitive on the wildcard side of things to me. You look at the bunch that the AL has, you're talking, teams that currently aren't in wildcard position. The Rays, Rangers, Guardians all have a really good chance. You could loosely say the Royals, if they stay pat at the deadline. I don't think they will. But on the NL side of things, you're basically looking at what? The Giants? Maybe. You're looking at possibly the Reds. I doubt it, but maybe. And that's about it. The Cardinals are going to be sellers here at the deadline. They designated Eric Fedde for assignment today. They've been trying to trade his contract basically since they acquired him. And it really hasn't gone well in his time in St. Louis. They gave him opportunity after opportunity to give what they were hoping to get out of that contract. And ultimately, just the time ran out. They were going to the youth movement, and I think that's what we're going to see at the deadline with a lot of their veteran players. Nolan Arenado, chief among them, I expect to be traded at the deadline. How much the Cardinals have to eat, remains to be seen. He isn't exactly a great performer this year. I'd imagine you're probably talking at least $20 million the Cardinals would have to eat. They were unwilling to do so before the season. Sounds like they were with the Houston Astros offer, the one that was accepted. The mark at that point was $15 million. Obviously, the contract has been paid down a little bit now, but even at that same number, I don't think you'd be able to get the return on him that you're hoping for. So I think you're going to have to eat about $20 million of that salary and then just see what teams would be interested and where Nolan is ultimately willing to waive his no trade for, and then just settle for whatever you can get. Now, they do have some assets that they could trade. Helsley out of the bullpen, I think, would be a nice rental option as far as a closer or setup guy. I think he ultimately ends up somewhere as a setup guy. Say on the Mets, for instance, they need some more depth in their bullpen. They've had a rocky bullpen over this year. They had to bring in Edwin Diaz in the 8th inning today to kind of settle things down against the Angels, and ultimately they were able to pull it out. But they still need more bullpen help there as well. Sarah, hey Michael, not thrilled losing, but it happens. Glad my Cards DFA'd Fetty. That's what we were just talking about, Sarah. I'm glad you're not upset by the move. I thought Fetty had a nice potential when he was brought in by the Cardinals. Honestly, his time with the White Sox, he was great. But with him coming to the Cardinals, he just wasn't the same pitcher. He regressed basically to what we had seen with the Washington Nationals by and large. Harley, I like Garcia, but the 8th inning, not closer. Absolutely, I agree. I think he's more of an 8th inning guy right now. He does have the potential to be a closer. I just think he's way too emotional right now to be able to handle it. Give it a year, maybe 2, and that maturity will really settle in for Robert Garcia of the Rangers, in case you're wondering who Harley was referring to. Ethan, I know you wouldn't like this, but I do, and the Rangers aren't guaranteed to stay healthy. Jim Riley has the Rangers trading Adolis and Jacob Latz to the Padres for Dylan Cease. His expected ERA is 3.3. His expected ERA was 3.5, but as far as Dylan Cease goes, I still think he's a great starting pitcher on the market. I think he's woefully unlucky this year. He's the league's unluckiest pitcher in all of baseball this year, and he's playing very well. Notwithstanding his team's performance around him, of course. Now, the 4 teams that were mentioned for Dylan Cease earlier today by John Heyman, along with several others that have at least kicked the tires on it, were the Yankees, the Mets, the Cubs, and the Red Sox as well. Those were the 4 teams. The Blue Jays were another team that had at least registered interest, along with several other teams that were looking for a starting pitcher at the deadline here. But teams that need an ace absolutely should make the call to the San Diego Padres. He's not going to cost a whole lot. Padres don't have enough prospect potential to really bring in anybody, long-term to that rotation. So this is their one piece to really add to the future of this franchise, because their prospect pool is very, very, very low right now. They only have 2 guys above, I believe, 15 value. You're talking Salas and DeVries, and they're not willing to trade either one of those. So if you're looking to make an impact move at the deadline, the only way to do it is what the finance guys have been saying all along out there in San Diego, is to offload some of that money and just redistribute that talent elsewhere. Sorry, getting more notifications popping up as we go. All right, let's try to blitz through some of these comments and then get into some the other news of the day. 144 Ks, 4th in MLB. He's been good. Elite stuff, yes he does. Ethan, starting pitching is least of Rangers' worries. Absolutely. Honestly, they're going to have a little bit too much. The question is, what are they going to do when Molly's going to be coming back right after the All-Star break? Right after the trade deadline, expected to come back in the first couple of weeks of August. You got John Gray, who probably figures into a long relief role along with Jacob Latz. They have plenty of starters. Honestly, Bruce Bochy said he'd love to have Jake Latz in the rotation, but there's just not a home for him. Eovaldi was in contention to start today. Sounds like the Rangers just wanted to give him a little extra time. He will be starting on Friday. He will not be going to the injured list, so good news there for the Rangers. Ethan, Rangers need one more starting pitcher. Molly might not be back in the rotation, as always banged up. Well, it ain't banged up right now. I mean, Eovaldi missed a start, sure, but, I mean, you got all 5 starters currently in there. All of them. DeGrom, Eovaldi on Friday, Leiter, Rocker, and Corbin. And you still have Latz on the active roster who can start, that Bochy says he wants to start. Then you just brought up John Gray as well, who looked absolutely dominant like he did before the season in spring training. He was every bit as good as he was then, maybe even a skosh better. He was really good in his rehab outing, his last rehab outing on the 20th as well. John Gray looks like a weapon for the Rangers out of the bullpen. Say you want to limit DeGrom's innings going forward. Now you have two options to utilize in that role. Jake Latz, and hey, maybe somebody scratched to start. Maybe you want to be cautious, spread out the innings a little bit on Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter. Hey, John Gray can make a spot start. They have lots of options going forward. And then, of course, that's not even mentioned Molly, who, again, will be back in the first couple of weeks of August. Nick, welcome in. First time I think I've seen you seen you in our chat here. If you guys are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on that little bell for the alerts whenever we do go live. We'll be live every single evening, usually around 9:30, 10 o'clock, breaking down all the latest around the MLB trade deadline. And then, of course, on trade deadline day, we'll be live all day long. We're going to start at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we're going to go at least through 5 o'clock. So be sure to hit that subscribe button and join us on trade deadline day. Michael, any thoughts on substantial rumors or news regarding any trades for the Brew Crew? As far as trades there, a couple of months ago they were connected to Adolis Garcia. Rangers aren't trading him. They have recently been connected to Marcell Ozuna. Not a big trade, but that would certainly give them a nice option against left-handed pitching, something they could utilize. Their pitching has been pretty good so far. That was seen as kind of an issue going into the year, but they've certainly been able to string out some nice starting pitching this year. I would like to see them add a nice bullpen piece here at the deadline, somebody small, nothing too huge. But they've also been rumored on some other controllable starters, guys like Mitch Keller, Edward Cabrera, those kinds of things, because, again, they do have a couple of guys that are headed towards free agency after the end of the year. They would be more of acquisitions for next year. I don't see that happening. I think they're going to try to run this out and see how this team really goes into October. But this Brewers team is certainly playing well above expectations so far. All right, Sean, is this your second time live today? Yes, it is. And who all gets traded from the Cardinals? I'd say Arenado, definitely. Helsley, definitely. I'd say there's a chance Nootbaar goes. If they get a controllable starting pitcher, I wouldn't be surprised if Burleson is the ask. If they can offload Gray, I'm sure they would love to do that. Phil Maton absolutely gets moved as well. Rangers traded for Scherzer and Montgomery at deadline. You always need starting pitching, true, but they didn't have the options that they have now that they had then. They were running about 5 starting pitchers and then a bunch of AAA guys that hadn't been proven at the big league level yet. This year, they have guys that are proven at the big league level, and they don't necessarily need to go out there and add another starting pitcher. Now, with that said, if there's an impact starting pitcher, we're talking Max Scherzer in his prime type of a starter, that would be a difference-making piece. They could do something like that. There's been rumors about them going after a controllable starter, like Cabrera, like Keller. I doubt that to a certain degree because I'm not sure where those guys would start in this rotation. Honestly, with how good this rotation has been, they might be the 6th starter. This has been a really good pitching staff in Texas that's been overlooked all season long by the national media. It's time they start to get their flowers. They've been fantastic. Welcome in to Twins fan. Appreciate you joining us once again. We're going to talk quite a bit about your Minnesota Twins later on in the show. Cubs interested in Class A. Cubs are interested in pretty much any elite starting pitcher, any elite bullpen arm. They are all in. Every bit of this team is all in. Remember, you make the trade for Kyle Tucker before the season. You basically overpay to bring him in anyway with only 1 year left on his deal. You may lose him for nothing in free agency. That's always a risk. This is a team that is going all in to try to win this season. So if they have to overpay to bring in an Emmanuel Clase, to bring in a Dylan Cease, even if he is a rental, they would be willing to do so because they are all in on the year. Now, you don't necessarily want to give up your best prospect for a middle relief guy. That's not going to happen. You still have to be reasonable about it. But if you're getting a difference-making piece, you may have to overpay more than what you're comfortable with in order to get the deal done. Padres looking at Marcell Ozuna. That is actually inaccurate. John Heyman came out and completely refuted that report. Marcell Ozuna and the Braves representatives and Padres representatives had not talked at all, one iota, about Marcell Ozuna. That will not be happening. Ozuna has 10-5 rights. He can waive. Basically has a no trade clause essentially because he's a 10-5 player for the Braves. He's basically going to pick his destination. Braves are going to get a small little something back in return, and I imagine he's going to be in the starting lineup day in and day out for wherever he ends up going. Padres, I think he'd be a nice fit. He may end up going there, but as of yet, there have not been substantiated reports that they are actually in contact. Astros are number one in the American League. Congratulations to your Astros there, Willard. Video I made earlier today, around 5 o'clock, posted it, was talking about Isaac Paredes' injury and how this was another blow to the offense there for the Astros. Yet you look at how this offense has really performed since he's gone down. They've done a great job continuing to produce there in Houston. Hats off to the Houston Astros. They continue to just keep on rolling despite losing guys in free agency, injuries, trades, just whatever seems to happen. They just keep rolling with the punches. Bryce Matthews finally figures out some big league pitching just at the right time to keep this team just afloat enough to keep winning these games. Hader's a difference maker at the back end as well. How long will this run go, though? They need to add another bat to me at the deadline here because I do think eventually the clock will strike 12. Cinderella will ultimately not continue to carry things here for the Astros, and it will their carriage anyway will turn back into a pumpkin. Anthony, I understand a lot of Rangers fans want hitting, but would it make sense for them to go after a mid-range starter like Cabrera? Just address that one. I'm not sure where Cabrera would honestly start in this rotation. He's not starting in front of DeGrom or Eovaldi, guaranteed. Corbin's actually been just as good, if not better, and you don't have to trade anything to get him. Leiter looks like a future number one, and he's certainly figured things out at the big league level. Kumar Rocker, I would have said that would have been the spot for him, but Kumar Rocker's looked a little bit better recently as well. So maybe you start him in front of Kumar Rocker, you push Kumar Rocker down to the minors, limit his innings the rest of the year because he's been great, but honestly, he's starting to figure out the big leagues. You don't need to shake up his confidence right now. I don't see them doing that type of a trade. Now, I could see them going after a controllable starting pitcher that's an impact starter, somebody who could be a number one or number two in anybody's rotation, and I really don't see that piece being on the market for the Rangers to acquire. All right, let's see, try to catch up on a few more of these comments. Nick, first time been in the chat live. Appreciate you joining us, Nick. I know we've got quite a few people with us right now, so be sure to hit that like and subscribe. Ethan, Pirates put O'Neill Cruz on the trade block. I would like him for the Rangers, but I know that ain't a match. They have not put him on the trade block. You're misreading the tweet that was sent out by Mark Feinsand. That was sent out just before we came on the air. Yes, O'Neill Cruz is a name that has been mentioned by rival clubs talking to the Pirates and asking about whether or not he would be available. Now, yes, they'll listen on any player, just like any team will here at the deadline. But what's the one thing the Pirates need more than anything right now? Offense. Are you really going to trade away your best offensive piece? I don't think so. The only way I could see that happening, just like the Feinsand tweet says, is if they're completely bowled over by an offer. To me, that means you're not only giving up the value of Cruz, you might be paying $1.50 on the dollar, $1.75 on the dollar. That's not going to happen here at the deadline. Cruz is a very nice piece, don't get me wrong, but you're not going to overpay by that wide of a margin to make it worth the Pirates giving up their best offensive player. Any rumors on a trade for the Astros? There have been rumors connecting them to Ozzie Albies at second base. With Bryce Matthews playing a little bit better, I wonder if they still go that route or if they go for an outfielder. Yandy Diaz rumors won't die continually for the Astros as well, even though they brought in Christian Walker. Maybe they view him as a DH, but again, where are you going to play Yordan Alvarez when he comes back? I don't see that as a logical fit, but the Diaz to Houston rumors do not die, apparently. But outfield rumors, pretty much any small, low-cost outfielder, Taylor Ward, names like that have been connected to Houston for basically the past month. I would still look in that kind of a vein here at the deadline for the Astros. That may be a middle relief guy as well. Their back end looks really good with Abreu and Hader, as long as Abreu doesn't face the Mariners. Mariners have gotten him pretty good all season long. With the Astros now running away with the division, the Mariners just being a pain in the Rangers, you know what? I think the Rangers should buy and sell. I don't see that either. Astros are playing really well right now, even with the injury to Paredes, but they aren't running away with the division. Right now they're, 6.5, 7.5 up? That's still less than what it was at the All-Star break. And we've only played, a week of baseball? The Rangers are playing really well. They got a really soft part of their schedule right now, going up against the A's. Now they're going to go up against the Braves, which they should play well against. Austin Riley is expected back on Friday for the Braves as well. That's an interesting name that hasn't been mentioned too much in the national media. But if they're talking Ozzie Albies out there in Atlanta, I wonder if they'd be willing to offload, say, another contract in Austin Riley, because he's so much more valuable and could really bring back a controllable starting pitcher in return. Curious about that one, but once he gets back on Friday, we'll see what kind of shape he's in and kind of go from there and let the rumors begin from there. But Mariners, I think they're a really good team this year. Their pitching hasn't nearly lived up to what it was expected to be going into the year. I think they're going to have to speak with the troops there and get that pitching staff to tone it down. Luis Castillo gets drilled a little bit today, not able to shut down the Brewers, and they end up swamping the Mariners there. All right, Willard, like outfield help and pitching. That's kind of what I was thinking, Willard, for the Astros. Astros want Yandy. They still want Yandy, but I don't see where he would play. I really don't. Sean, does Michaelis and Matz get traded? Matz, absolutely. Michaelis, no. He has a no trade. He isn't going anywhere. Let's see. Michael Pierce, I know the Rangers want to have Jack and Kumar limit starts, so they have to limit service time for them. Sure, but then you're still talking Jake Latz. You're still talking John Gray. You're still talking Tyler Mahle. One name nobody's really talked about is Adrian Hauser, who started the season with the Rangers in their in spring training anyway, and then in the minor leagues, has been really good for the Chicago White Sox. He's going to command a decent prospect package back for the White Sox. If you're looking for a short-term starter, that would be where you would go here at the deadline. So, teams looking to get starting pitching back in September might look to Hauser as well. Nick, thank you for the insight. I agree. If the Crew are able to make a move, it's not going to be a big splash, but they go after a bat with some pop. I'm glad the Peralta rumors have died. Me too. It's the Josh Hader move came out of nowhere. They thought Hader would be moved for years and years, and then finally nobody's talking about Hader, and then boom, that's when they trade Hader. So I hope they don't do that again with Peralta here. But this Brewers team is just really good right now. They're pitching really, really well, but they could use another offensive piece on the right-handed side of things to be able to handle left-handed pitching. Let's see here. Michael, what are your thoughts on if the Marlins sign Sandy to an extension because his contract is about to finish? I think this year's coming up. Sandy's got, 2 years left on his deal? A year, somewhere in there. But Sandy finally put out a good performance on the mound today, and I think the Marlins are going to try to move him. And I think there will be a team that takes a chance on him. The Dodgers seem like a great fit. They've done a great job rehabilitating teams that have struggled, or players that have struggled from injury returns, and then finally built them back up to being the player they once were. Dodgers are uniquely qualified to get him back to where Sandy Alcantara was at his heights of his powers with the Marlins. Ethan, can you cook up a trade for Hunter Goodman to Texas? I would love this. I would say that there's an outside chance Hunter Goodman could be available at the deadline. For that type of a move, you're basically giving up all of your best pieces if you're the Rangers to make that move. You already have Higashioka. Heim is currently the backup. You're basically getting an upgrade, having a 1A, 1B that you hoped Heim would be. That's not a big enough impact for me to make that type of a trade here at the deadline. You save those trade assets to bring in a bat or bring in an elite closer option. Duran, we're talking Clase, somebody along those lines. For Goodman, the risk reward there isn't worth it. The juice isn't worth the squeeze, as they say. So I would like Hunter Goodman maybe as an off-season trade, but I don't see that being a wise move for the Rangers at this point. I think Higashioka's offense has really picked up. He does have a tight hamstring. He's going to be back in 3 days. Had a half-grade strain is what they're calling it. So he's just going to take a few days and he'll be fine. He's not even going to go on the IL. But they could use an upgrade at backup catcher here. I wouldn't be surprised if they did try to move on from Jonah Heim. They're going to try to do so after the season, one way or the other, non-tender him or trade him. But if they decided to do so during the season, I wouldn't be overly shocked. There's a number of candidates that would kind of fit that backup catcher spot without giving up the farm like you'd have to for Hunter Goodman. Thank you for the Cinderella analogy. Appreciate it. Come on, Michael, I get you're not a fan, but you got to admit what you said about the Astros is just hating them. Tell me, the Rangers fan, deep down, you got to be impressed by them. I'm not saying I'm not impressed by the Astros, but I'm saying how much longer is this run of good luck going to run their way? This is not a good offensive team that they've got fielded right now. They've certainly done enough to be able to win games, and they just played a Diamondbacks team that is not playing good baseball. And they're going to be selling here at the deadline anyway, so I'm sure the pressure was really getting to them. I mean, you saw Suarez ground into double plays, strike out to end innings with runners on third base. He can't do it every time, I get it. And the pitching there for Houston has been really good this year. Got to give your hats off to them. But this offense eventually, it's just going to come to a grinding halt there. And I wonder, and without them adding another bat, how much further this team can continue to produce at the clip they're going to. I imagine that gap is going to close in the division, whether it be the Mariners, the Rangers, picking up ground on them. I still think the Astros have the inside track to win the division. I still think the Astros are going to be a good team. The question is, when do they get the pieces back that are injured? Alvarez, Pena, Paredes, and others. Lots of things to consider there in Houston. Do you think teams will ask a lot for their players at this deadline? Abso-freaking-lutely. There are so few sellers on the market this year that prices are going to be extremely high. You think that a rental option, a fourth, fifth starter that's not even going to take the ball in a postseason series is going to be cheap here at the deadline? Those guys are even going to command probably a top 20 prospect from a team. That's how high prices are going to be. That's not even including controllable starters, rental options at the top of a rotation. We're not talking about controllable assets that are bats. There aren't even really good bats out there. We're talking middling at hitters that are on the market. Marcell Ozuna's had a down year. He's still going to command a okay prospect in return. He's been a 200 hitter though for basically the past 30 days. You look at Taylor Ward. He's going to command a decent package back if he does get moved. Orioles are going to get a nice return for Ryan O'Hearn. Prices are going to be really high. Sean, do the Diamondbacks sell? I think with them getting swept by the Astros, they absolutely will sell. I think that decision has now been made for them. After the game was done today, rumors immediately started flying about them immediately shifting into sell mode with Naylor, Suarez, Gallen, Kelly, and others that they will begin talking about now. Michael, when you look at Sandy and how he pitches on the mound, his mentality, who do you see him? I see a lot of Curt Schilling or Bob Gibson. I don't quite see either one of those. I see more of trying to think of a good comp here. Not Chris Sale. I'm trying to think of somebody who's not exactly mechanically sound every time he takes the mound. It's going to sound like a bad comp, but Jesse Chavez, when he first started as a starting pitcher for the Oakland A's, he was all over the place with his arm slot. That's why he eventually went to the bullpen, because he wasn't consistent enough. Alcantara right now is more of the inconsistent player that Jesse Chavez was, rather than the Hall of Fame version of Curt Schilling or Bob Gibson when Alcantara was at the height of his abilities. If he can tone down his issues, then I'd say he's more along the lines of Kenny Rogers a little bit. He reminds me a little bit of Kenny Rogers. Rogers was a little bit more stocky, but very similar in the way they would handle at bats. Anyway, Michael, do the Actuals have enough in their farm system or any young close on there? Trying to see who you're trying to mean by the Actuals. Astros, okay. Stowers from Miami. They could do it, but they'd have to sell out their farm system. And I think they might be willing to do so for a piece like that. He is controllable for 3 more seasons. Over under 3 trades for the Rangers at the deadline, like legit trades. Are we counting Dane Dunning? I would say no. I would not count Dane Dunning, but I would count that as a trade at the deadline. But if you're talking like legit trades, like pieces that are going to be on the active roster, I'd say probably 2. I'll say they add a bullpen arm, an elite arm in the back end of their bullpen, a closer-type player. I think they're going to make a trade with Luke Jackson tomorrow. I wouldn't count that as a trade, though. And then I think they'll add a hitter. Somebody who can hit left-handed pitching. Rowdy Tellez, obviously, is not going to be on the roster too much longer. I like what he's given to the team here on a short-term basis, but he's going to go back to the minor leagues here soon. Jake Berger will be back at the big club. Jock Peterson will be back with the big club. Haggerty's going to be coming back. Interesting time for the Rangers as they are, I believe, a game and a half out. You're happy Luke Jackson got DFA'd? He was good in the first half. He was the reason why the Rangers were able to win a couple of close games early in the season. He did his job, though, for the Rangers. He's got a 4 ERA? I think he was around a 5 for a minute there. I can't remember where he's at specifically, but he was by far the worst option the Rangers had in their bullpen at the moment. And they're going to have to make room on this roster eventually for the closer that they're going to be bringing in. So making the move now lets them get that business out of the way before they get to the deadline. Gives them some roster flexibility. Saves them a little bit of money as well, because if you can find a trade for Luke Jackson, I'm sure a team like the Mets to me seem like a perfect fit for Luke Jackson. Been a closer, been an 8th inning setup guy, has had a good season, but probably slots in as their 6th inning reliever in that bullpen. And if he finds it like he did early in the season, he could obviously flex upward. If he doesn't, get him out of town. You would DFA Webb next. I don't think you DFA Webb. He's been too good this year. Earlier this season, I would have said that's a possibility, but he's been too good for about the last month. Every now and again, he has a blow-up. Like every 7 outings or so, he gives up a homer, an ill-timed run, those kinds of things. Allows inherited runners to score. But outside of that, Webb's been pretty good. If they do get 2 relievers, I think Webb would be the next one out of town, though. But I think you could get a decent prospect in return for Webb here at the deadline. Say you trade Webb to a team like, I don't know, Padres have had a really good bullpen. Say you trade him to the Giants for a low value prospect. That could be a possibility as well. Who has the most pressure on them to dethrone the Astros, the Rangers, Mariners, or even the Yankees? If we're talking outside of the division, most pressure. Well, I mean, of those teams, the Rangers are the most recent one to win the World Series, so they don't have the most pressure on them. I would say the Mariners, just because they've continued to struggle to build a productive team and get them to the postseason consistently. Drawing the ire of Cal Raleigh a couple of off seasons ago, or a couple of trade deadlines ago, when the Rangers won the World Series that year. Cal Raleigh spoke up and basically said, "Hey, we're in this wild card race. Why are you trading away our closer to an in-division rival, the Houston Astros?" That was Kendall Graveman at the time. So I'd say the Mariners probably have the most pressure. Yankees, it's never about the division or anything like that for the Yankees. It's always about the World Series. Understandably, the Astros and Yankees aren't in the same division, but I don't think the Yankees are overly worried about the Houston Astros this year. I think the Yankees see the streakiness of their offense. That's probably the most worrisome thing to them offensively. Pitching staff, the back end needs a little bit of help on the back end of the rotation, and then another 8th inning setup guy or maybe even a closer type to help them out. I think they'll address all 3, but I don't think they're necessarily worried about the Houston Astros specifically here at the deadline to solve those problems. Michael, when you look at both Luke and Webb, I think both of them are elite middle or long relievers. I'd say they're good middle relievers. I wouldn't say they're long relievers by any stretch. Webb probably is an inning, maybe 2 at best. Luke Jackson probably an inning, maybe 2 at best. But long relievers, that implies guys willing to do 2 innings regularly. But I'd say they're a decent setup option. I'd say they're a poor closer option. But I think they have a good spot in somebody's bullpen as they've been decent options this year. Who do the Nationals trade Nate Lowe to? Anybody needing help at first base offensively, I would say the Rangers, but they're not going to take on that salary, and they had him last year. The Red Sox make a little bit of sense, but I doubt that. Honestly, it's hard to see them moving Nate Lowe because they have another piece, Josh Bell, who's playing better on a cheaper deal. That's a very comparable player type. I think they'd find an easier trade for Josh Bell than Nathaniel Lowe. And then in the offseason, see how the second half works for Nate Lowe and trade him in the offseason. All right, let's get into some actual rumors and so forth going around. Let's go ahead and pull it up for you guys. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you have not already. Got about 30 of you guys in here with us. Let me update the page here. Rays sound like they're not going to be... Taj Bradley got optioned? Wow. He had a rough start, but I mean, damn. Damn. But Pete Fairbanks is not expected to be moved by the Rays. It was a cost-cutting move that was rumored in the offseason. That's not going to happen. But ultimately here at the deadline, the bullpen has still been an issue for the Rays. It sounds like they still have faith in Fairbanks to kind of stabilize that back into that bullpen. If their bullpen was a little bit stronger, they might be willing to move Fairbanks. But as it is, they don't really have options to fill that role. They made the trade for Baker, giving up a number 37 pick overall in the draft. to be able to get another improvement in that bullpen. They're not looking to deconstruct it now a couple of weeks later. Guardians are open to trading Shane Bieber here at the deadline. Not sure how much he'll actually help a team this year, as far as how big of an improvement he would actually represent, but he's at least on the market, I suppose. Anthony, my friend, is a Seattle Mariners fan, and he's wondering, are they going to trade any other surplus pitching for hitters? Well, their pitching hasn't performed very well this year. If their pitching had performed a little bit better, we're probably talking about the Mariners running away with the division right now, because their offense has been a lot better in the first half. It's starting to regress. It has been for about the last month or so, but they've given up a full 100 runs more than the Rangers so far this season. Who would have thought that going up until the trade deadline, that the Rangers would have a 100-run better pitching staff than the Seattle Mariners? You're talking about 5 starters deep in that rotation going into the year. Munoz as your closer, a very deep bullpen with arms coming back from the injured list into the season as well, Brash and Spire. It was supposed to be a much better pitching staff, and it hadn't quite lived up to it. Now, I'm not saying Seattle should be bringing in arms. I just think they need to get the arms that they have to perform a little bit better. Rattle the timbers, if you will. That kind of a thing. And then as far as the offense, I still think they need one more piece. First base would probably be the easiest one for them to bring in. Canzone's been a nice revelation for them in the outfield, but he's a part-time player for them. If there's a full-time player that makes a difference for them, that would be a nice piece for them to try to acquire. We already talked about Eric Fedde for the Cardinals getting DFA'd, Paredes' injury. Mariners have reached out about Eugenio Suarez, bringing him back. We talked about that one last night. And Twins are listening on rental players, but I've been reading a bunch of different reports out there from a lot of different reporters. I believe Griffin Jax and Duran are going to be gone at the trade deadline. I think the price for relief pitching is so high that they'll be able to get that price met, and they'll be able to get a nice return for Duran. Now, as far as them trading both, I think that's a little bit less likely, but I still think with how high prices are for relief pitching, if they got that price for Duran, they could easily turn around and trade Jax as well. I don't think they'd have any qualms trading both of those guys because, again, bullpen guys are notoriously mercurial. Griffin Jax has been he's handled a few closing situations in his career, but certainly is not a closer by nature. Price for him probably is slightly less as a result, but because of the strikeouts, the ability to strike out a hitter, he's still going to command a hefty return for a package for him. But his price on baseball trade values is actually a little bit higher than Duran. Out of the two, I'd rather have the closing experience of Duran than the strikeout ability of Jax at this point. Do you think Mike Maddox could be the next manager of the Rangers? No, I don't. I think the next manager for the Rangers is already on staff for the Rangers, and that's Skip Schumacher. He is he's a consultant for the Rangers right now. When and if Bochy ever does decide to step away, Schumacher, who goes on vacations with Bochy, will be the next guy there for the Rangers. Probably Bochy sticks around, I'd imagine, through this year, maybe next, and then it becomes whether or not he's going to come back after that. That's when I'd imagine the succession plan is Skip Schumacher. I'm sure Bochy would love to add another World Series ring to his collection. We'll have to see if they get it done this year. Cubby Knoll, appreciate you joining us. Eugenio is traded to the obvious answer, the New York Yankees. I think this is a fait accompli. Judge basically said that's the player he wants the Yankees to go for. Cashman's going to understand the assignment and get the deal done, and he's going to pay through the nose in order to get him. He is by far the biggest power bat available at this deadline, and he will pay to get him on that roster. We'll have to see what they do, though. I think the Yankees are in a good spot right now to make several additions here at the deadline. They will probably be one of the 2 or 3 most aggressive teams buying here at the deadline. All right, let's get it over to Twitter, see if anything is breaking at the moment, or I should say X at this point. A lot of draft picks are getting signed. Bradley getting optioned. We talked about Fairbanks. This was that Fine Sand tweet about O'Neal Cruz. Apparently, the Phillies clubhouse got into it with Rob Manfred in the last few days. Rob Manfred basically went in there to talk about how good a salary cap would actually be for the league and for the players, how it really would fix the problem of the money of baseball. Well, the money's doing just fine, so I don't really see a problem. Now, if you're trying to tell me the issue is the smaller market teams not paying at the level that they should, parity should be better than it even is right now. I could hear you, but you're not actually talking about any of those things right now. So we will see. I just saw a tweet come through. Let me see what it was. Bochy didn't go one way or the other in verdict on the Garcia throw, but did say that was a good send by the A's. I'll say that. That was the bad throw earlier in the game about Adolis Garcia throwing it into second that allowed the A's to score a run. Garcia's a really good arm in right field, but he's made some questionable throws over the past week. Probably 3 or 4 different ones. All right, here you got Stephen Kwan, Shane Bieber, Dominguez, LaGrange, and Spencer Jones. I think the Guardians would still want more. That's a really good package. By actual talent on the field, that's actually a pretty decent deal. I don't think the Yankees would ever give up Dominguez. Maybe if you included a different piece in that deal, that would be more interesting. Yes, we already answered that, Willard, but the Astros are looking for both bullpen help, middle of the bullpen anyway, bullpen help, and they're also looking for a hitter. Left-handed hitting second baseman was the need before the injury to Paredes. I wonder if that changes now. We'll have to see if they ultimately target another outfielder with the emergence of Bryce Matthews over the past few days, but we'll have to see. Cubby Nola, is Edward Cabrera the best starting pitcher available? I think Gore is out there. Ryan is out there. I'd say all of those are unlikely. I'd say Cabrera is the most likely of those options. Keller is absolutely an option. I'd say Cease is absolutely an option. The best option to start this season, probably Dylan Cease. Cabrera, I'd probably put right behind him. Gore is pitching to a 3.5 ERA this year, but has 2 years left on his deal after this season. I'd probably put him along with Joe Ryan tied after that. I would say that Gore is a little bit less likely, but if you're willing to bowl over a team like the Nationals for Gore, I think you could get it done. Same thing for Ryan. I'd say Ryan slightly less likely than Gore, ever so slightly. Ethan, Rangers might not trade Adolis this season, but they aren't paying him $16 million next year. I think they'll try to work out something contract-wise next year with Adolis Garcia to either A, keep him in town or trade him and utilize that salary elsewhere. For instance, we've talked quite a bit about Kyle Tucker being a free agent next year. Rangers were already part of the rumor mill around his free agency next year already. That and Alex Bregman, we'll see what they ultimately add. John, when will the Yankees' first trade be? Honestly, I'm surprised we haven't seen any activity really over the past few days. Nothing big. I mean, there's not a lot of big pieces to move here at the deadline, but we're talking, any of the controllable starters, you got to start seeing some of those moves probably before Saturday. I would say Saturday we finally get our first few moves for the Yankees. I would expect them to try to get a bullpen arm and a starter first, and then the Suarez deal might take until Sunday, maybe Monday to get that one done. But the deadline is Thursday. Again, we'll be live all day long. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Morosi just sent something out. Blue Jays and Astros tied for the best record in the AL. Well, speaking of those standings, let's take a look at where everybody is. On the American League side, everybody has 60 wins that's currently leading a division. Tigers have fallen on some really rough times offensively. Pitching staff's not pitching much better as well since the All-Star break ended. And they're 60-43 now. So Astros have caught them. Blue Jays have caught them. Yankees have fallen back in the division a little bit here as they continue to have their difficulties with those Blue Jays. Fundamental baseball issues, back to the rotation issues, bullpen issues, offensive slumps at the most inopportune time issues. Yankees are still a good team. They just need to finish out this roster a little bit, get a little bit more consistency in the bullpen, in that lineup, and in that rotation. Mariners just need to play a little bit better on the pitching side of things, but need a bat. They're tied for the second wild card here, but they're only a game in front of the Rays, a game and a half. Actually, this hasn't even updated with the Rays loss. It's actually a game and a half anyway now, with the Rays and Rangers now tied a game and a half back of the Red Sox and Mariners. It's going to be an interesting time. Red Sox got a tough series coming up against the Dodgers. Rays are going to be in Cincinnati. Rangers are going to be at home, meanwhile, against the Atlanta Braves. Got to think things are going to get very interesting there, and the Angels look like they've basically bowed out of this race here. They're now 5 games back in the wild card. Twins 5 games back. They look like they're bowing out of this race. Guardians 2.5 games back, but with the Tigers continuing to struggle, they now are looking at the division as a possibility for them. They're only, 8 games back in the division, or excuse me. Yeah, 8 games back, I think, in the division. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they catch them, given how poorly the Tigers have been playing for basically 2-3 weeks now. The Yankees still getting Suarez. They do. Sean, Cubs are hosting the 27 All-Star Game. Gotta love playing in Wrigley. That's a great ballpark. Heel, Yandy Diaz has played second base before. I wonder if the Astros get him, if that's their mindset. That would be a way that it would make sense, I suppose. When do you think the first legitimate deadline deal will occur? My guess is Monday. It's not going to wait. It's not going to take that long. Usually it happens about a week and a half before the deadline. We are right at that mark right now. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the first real move happen tomorrow. Heel, like the Dodgers scouting said the Yankees are talent over fundamentals, and that you can only take you so far. True. He said yesterday, go put 10K on Suarez to the Yankees. Yeah, pretty much. 8 games is still a lot. Yeah, it is, but, I mean, you just look at the past week, right? Just the past week. You make up a couple of games here, couple of games there. I mean, we've seen a team come from 10 games back before with only a month left. You got 2 months, and the Tigers are in a tailspin already. Could the Cubs get a third baseman via trade? Absolutely. If Arenado's price goes down far enough, if they pay down enough of that deal, there could easily be a trade there with them and Arenado. They've been connected to Suarez loosely. Ryan McMahon rumors picked up today there as well. Daniel, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. I think it's the first time I've seen you in our chat. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe. We'll be live every night around 9:30, 10 o'clock, bringing you all the latest from the trade deadline. And then on trade deadline day, we'll be live all day long. How about Pirates trade Keller, Hayes, and Bednar for Dominguez and another high-ready prospect? Honestly, I think the Pirates would want to diversify their return more. Not saying that they wouldn't want Bednar, but I'm saying that they would want a better package of pieces. That doesn't necessarily give them just one piece back. I think Keller could get you a return similar to the value of Dominguez already. Hayes is seen as a negative asset as an offensive player, specifically with that contract. Glove first player, readily available at the market on the market this year. Bednar, I think, could get you a decent prospect as well. There's no reason to combine all those pieces in one deal. Usually teams that sell don't do those kinds of things. 2014 deadline saw 0 top 100 prospects moved out of 3 top 100 prospects moved. Seller's market, so would probably take over. First part of your comment there. Will a top 100 guy be moved at the deadline this year? I think there's that much desperation in Chicago that it could happen. There's enough smoke to some very controllable pieces that I believe one of them will move. I don't believe a bevy of them will move, but I could see a bunch of them move. Young and Rosario for Dominguez, that would never happen. Dominguez has too much talent. Young is seen as a fading asset, and Rosario's injured. Even though the value probably is very close by baseball trade values, that's not something the Yankees would be willing to do right now either. On the NL side of things, looking at the standings, Brewers out in front, 61-41. Dodgers got the win, even though their bullpen kind of imploded late again. Mets, their bullpen did implode a little bit, but they were able to course correct before it got too risky. Cubs now are in the wild card, but are comfortably there, along with the Phillies. Padres in that last wild card spot with the Giants, and then loosely the Reds competing for that final wild card spot. If I had to pick right now which teams ultimately make the postseason, I haven't done this in a minute. We still got a week to go till the deadline, but let's kind of keep this in mind as we see where teams kind of position themselves. So before any team makes any real big move, How would I see this thing working out? I'll go ahead and say the Astros still win the division. I'm comfortable saying that. I'd say the Jays hold on and win the division. I'll say the same with the Tigers. Even though there's a tailspin, I just don't have faith that the Guardians can climb that high. Yankees, I still think course corrected, add enough pieces to win the top wild card spot. I'm going to say the Rangers get that second wild card, so it'll be Yankees and Rangers in the wild card round. That'll be a dynamic series. Rangers got swept in New York, but that'll be DeGrom and Eovaldi, Game 1, Game 2, versus Fried and Rodon, most likely. That'd be must-see television. And then the final wild card spot, I want to say the Mariners get in, but I just don't think they're going to add a big enough piece. I think their pitching has faltered enough. The Red Sox don't look very good right now, but they've been incredibly streaky all year. I'll say the Red Sox get that final wild card, and once again, the Mariners come just short. Jerry Dipoto gets fired after the season. I'll say that's how things stand right now. Now, we'll see how things look in a week after teams make their trades, but for right now, I'd say that the Rangers basically flop with the Mariners, and that's how things end up for the postseason. On the NL side, Brewers have been really good with that pitching staff. 391 runs allowed. The offense has been clicking. I've been waiting for it to regress all year, but it really hasn't. And they still may add one more piece to finish it off. But I think the Cubs are desperate enough they'll make the biggest impactful move. Because without them really having an ace in their staff, Imanaga's been good, but they need an ace. I'd say the Cubs win the division. I'll say the Dodgers comfortably win their division. I'm going to take the Phillies to end up winning the division over the Mets. Because I'm not sure the Mets, even though they need an ace, I think they'll add a pitcher that's probably number 2. I wonder if they add an ace-type pitcher. But I think the Phillies are just that good, and I think they'll solve their issues in the bullpen and in center. So for me, division winners kind of flop there a little bit. Cubs and Phillies, who were in the division lead yesterday, ultimately get back in there. Wild card, I think, are easily Mets and Brewers. I'll say the Brewers win the first wild card, so the Mets would have to travel to Milwaukee. And then the final wild card, I'd say, still pretty much stays the same with the Padres. I think the Giants just fall a little short. I think the Reds is too early, but it's a good step forward with Francona as their manager. But again, that's 1 week out until the trade deadline. Who knows where these players go? Maybe the Braves shock us and trade Olsen, Riley, Albies, reset things, get some controllable pitching for next year. That could really change the race for a lot of these divisions. Maybe the Pirates are bowled over by an offer and trade O'Neal Cruz. That would be a difference-making piece for somebody. Am I expecting those moves? No, but there's always one out-of-the-blue trade that we see every year. And I think this is the year where a lot of teams are desperate enough at the top to make those types of moves. I think they're just waiting for prices to come down on these guys that they perceive as rentals, and they realize that the talented pieces that are out there aren't necessarily difference-making pieces, aren't winning a series type of a piece. They're filling a hole pieces, yes. They're lengthening the lineup pieces, yes. They're helping your bullpen, middle relief bullpen pieces, yes. But the only really elite options that are out there via trade are closers, really. All right, Cubby Clase is cheap and under control for a few more years. What kind of prospect return could you get for him? He's around 36, so I could imagine you get. I could imagine you get at least a borderline top 100 guy, maybe a top 200 guy as a secondary piece, and then a lottery ticket after that. Cubs won't stay a wild card. My prediction right now is that they ultimately win the division. Michael, as a Rangers fan, I'm not that confident in the Rangers getting the wild card unless the bats come alive at the right time. Honestly, I think if the bats even stay as they are, I think the pitching has proven it's good enough to be able to carry this team as far as they need it to go with the bats that they have right now. Now, I'm not saying they have enough bats to win the division. I'm not saying they have enough bats to win the World Series right now. But I think if they want to get into the wild card, The pitching is more than good enough to get them there right now. I do think they'll add another pitcher. And the question is, do these bats continue to improve like they have been for the past 4 weeks now? Since the All-Star break, though, they've been really sluggish so far. Hopefully they come out of it against the Braves, who have really been struggling to put a competent pitching staff together. They should put up some runs against the Braves. If they don't put up runs against the Braves, I'll have questions. Cubs win NL Central. They have a top 5 offense, defense, and base running. Yes, but they need starting pitching. Boyd has a 2.2 ERA. He's been great. He's been ace-ish, sure, but I'm not trusting him in Game 1 of a series. I might trust him in Game 3, but I'm not trusting him in Game 1. Too much pressure in that spot for Boyd. Rangers right now are a prime definition of baby steps. Absolutely. Last 72 hours should be wild. Absolutely agree with that one. Honestly, last 6 hours of the deadline should be absolutely crazy with the number of small, middle relief options like the Jacob Webb option, like the Luke Jackson option. Those types of trades are going to be plentiful on deadline day. Banana, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us. If you guys are joining us for the first time, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. We'll be live every single evening around 9:45, 10 o'clock, bringing you the latest from the MLB trade deadline. And on deadline day, we'll be live all day long. So make sure you join us. Do you think the Mariners actually do something at the deadline? I think they'll add a couple of pieces. I think they'll try to add one smaller bat, and I think they'll try to add one impact piece, like a Ryan O'Hearn, somebody along those lines, maybe a Josh Naylor type. I think that would be the type of player they really need to go for. John, are the Yankees looking at McMahon? They are. If I had to rank the options for third baseman for the Yankees, I'd probably say Suarez 1. Most likely options for them. Suarez 1. 2. Arenado, McMahon, Hayes. I'll put Hayes at 2. I'll put McMahon 3, Arenado 4, in that order. All right, let's get into some trades here before we head out for the evening. If you missed our earlier show, I'm going to show you a couple of the trades that we did make, once it loads, of course. We had a request anyway to send Mark Vientos in exchange for Keller, and that would kind of be what the trade would look like. If I'm the Pirates, I would hold out for a little bit more. If I'm the Mets, I'm not sure that gives me enough ammunition at the trade deadline to give up that type of prospect return. I'd be looking for an ace, not a middle-of-the-rotation starter. We had a lot of questions about Kwan and his availability. If the Mariners went out there and made that addition, Guardians would still stay competitive with Logan Evans going in there as the number 5 starter, but they would certainly add enough offensive pieces for the future of the Guardians to make it worth giving up Kwan. But they might be able to get a better offer from the Los Angeles Dodgers. We traded Clase and Kwan to the Dodgers, solves their needs in the bullpen, solves their needs in the outfield. Biggest piece they get is Josue DuPaula, Mike Sirota. Those would be impactful pieces for the Guardians' future. Jackson Ferris as a starter, Gavin Stone as a starter, Lindsey as a shortstop option, all great promising futures. And then Bobby Miller, injured right now, goes into the rotation next year for the Guardians. This would be a hard trade for the Guardians to turn down. If the Dodgers put this offer on the table and said, look, take it or leave it. This is the only time we're offering you Josue DePaula, Sirota, Francis, Lindsey, and Stone in the same deal. But we want Kwan and Clase packaged together. Remember what I said earlier in the video. It's very rare you see valuable pieces moved together in the same deal from a selling club. And I don't think the Guardians would necessarily be looking to sell. But if they did, they would be buying their future here in this trade. Smith immediately goes to your closer. Dodgers obviously get the pieces that they need most desperately right now. That'd be a hard offer to turn down if you're the Guardians, though. We had somebody ask about Mackenzie Gore with the video that we made earlier today about the Chicago Cubs aggressively pursuing a controllable starter, an ace type of a starter. Gore does fit that description and has 2 more years of control. This would be an all-in trade because it is a little bit of an overpay. Wiggins, you see that 5.4 next to his name? Go ahead and double that, maybe a little bit more than that, because that's how good of a pitcher he's been so far. His value is certainly going to go up. Triantos' value a little bit down, so I guess you could kind of flip-flop those, maybe get a little extra juice here. But the reason they make this trade, you get Cade Horton, you get Ballesteros, and you get Rojas in this deal. Cubs get a bullpen option as well for a setup guy in Finnegan. Would I do this if I'm the Nationals? It would be close. It would be something to at least get me to the table and think about. I might want something different than Triantos. I might hold out for Owen Casey or Alcantara. But that would be a trade I'd be willing to discuss. McMahon is awful away from Coors, and he isn't cheap. He is expensive, I will say that. So if the Rockies, who have been willing to pay down contracts in the past, are willing to pay it down, could be a useful piece here at the deadline. Hoyer has to go all in or he's out. I think that was kind of the quiet assumption here before the season. That's why they made the trade for Kyle Tucker. Shane J. Ram has a no-trade clause. He'd be a fun target. He's not going anywhere. He is Mr. Guardian. Now, if he goes to the Guardians and says, hey, if you're trading Quan and Clase, go ahead and move me as well, he would probably be the biggest bat that moves at the deadline. That contract is still very cheap for the Guardians. They don't need to trade him. But he would command a king's ransom and then some. All right, we had some Dylan Cease rumors as well. We had some requests to see where he would ultimately, or what the cost would be to acquire him. Blue Jays, he would probably be their number 1, 2, or 3 starter in a postseason series. That's why it would be worth it for the Blue Jays to make this trade. They said that the Padres are said to want a controllable outfielder in return, so keep that in mind. Controllable outfielder in return. Varsho has 1 year left on his deal, but they get 2 young starting pitchers to help with their future. Not a bad deal overall. Cubs. Obviously, Owen Casey would immediately be the ask for the Padres. They get a lottery ticket in Mule as well. This would be a very close deal I could see happening at the deadline. I think both teams win in that deal. This trade I doubt would happen because I think Spencer Jones, his value is all over the place for where the Yankees fans view him, the Yankees front office view him, other teams' front offices view him. I think his value is just too unpredictable here. And so they don't really have an outfield piece besides Jones that would be worth it for the Padres to be able to make this trade. But if they wanted Dylan Cease, this would probably have to be the most likely exchange. We had another request anyway from Mitch Keller to the Blue Jays, what it would look like. You'd trade Namala and Yasevich to be able to bring in Keller. Yes, it's an overpay, but with as high as the prices are right now for controllable starting pitching, that would be the most likely price here for Keller. Again, 3 years left on his deal. Let's see here. And then those were the ones from last night there. Cease's underlying metrics are awesome. Hope the Cubs go for it. If I'm a Cubs fan, he would be the guy I would want at the front of the rotation. He could take the ball in Game 1. Imanaga maybe Game 2. Boyd Game 3. And then your Game 4 starter I don't think is on the roster. In fact, I think the starter who pitched against them today could be their Game 4 starter, that being Seth Lugo. Padres want Adolis for Cease. That's not going to happen. Banana, what would be the most unexpected name you think will be traded? Good question. I do think we will have an unexpected name be traded. And I'm not talking like a middle of the rotation starter that makes a move. I'm talking like big-time player. Now, keep that in mind here. Big time for this market is going to be like Austin Riley, O'Neal Cruz, players like that. So I would expect one of those names to get moved. Which one specifically? If I was throwing a dart, I think the Gore rumors are legitimate. I think if the price is overwhelming, I think he could move. I think he will move if the price is overwhelming. New GM in charge there. I'm sure he wants to make a stamp, and always going young, setting yourself up for future success buys you time as the new GM. Would make sense. Trying to think of, if I had to pick one, a dart throw, who would I go for? Machado from the Padres ain't going to go anywhere. Stowers, I think, could be a decent option here at the deadline. I would never move him if I'm the Marlins, but I'm hearing too many rumblings about his availability. Who else would be an interesting target here? Let me go ahead and pull up the trade block here, or the trade simulator, and kind of go through it team by team. Because, you know, I'm like you guys. I'm a fan of baseball. I want to see really cool trades happen. Angels, they don't really have a piece that would fit that description. Mike Trout ain't going anywhere. Astros really don't have anything besides maybe Bryce Matthews that they could trade in a bigger deal, but the return for Bryce Matthews would be the best part of the deal. The A's, Mason Miller, I think has a legitimate chance to be traded that nobody's really talking about. I think that they showcased him in the game last night against the Rangers to specifically showcase him as an eighth inning guy coming on for a specific hitter, lowering his ERA to 4. I think they'll use him maybe one more time before the deadline, and that's it. Keeping him healthy, making sure he doesn't punch the wall again. I think the A's would be wise to do so and then bring in starting pitching, prospects, because this offense is ready to go. They will need to add bullpen pieces in the offseason, but those are a lot easier to get. Look at how the Rangers built a really great bullpen on a shoestring budget. Rays have done it for decades. But Mason Miller, I think, had a very good chance to move from the A's. Phillies, Mets, probably the most likely, along with the Yanks. But I do think Mason Miller will be moved if I had to throw a dart at it. Honestly, I don't even think it's that big of a dart, because I do think the A's are absolutely showcasing him for a trade. I don't think they'd move Rooker. Kurtz is way too valuable. Honestly, I think he's going to be in that top 5 best players in the sport inside of the next 365 days. Blue Jays, they're not going to do anything overly surprising. Bichette's staying. Braves, if you're looking surprising deals, you're looking Olsen, you're looking Riley, you're looking Albies, you're looking Ronald Acuna. I would say all those trades are extremely unlikely. I don't think it's legit. I'm not going to throw my dart at the Braves. I just don't buy it. Now, Albies I could see, because he's only got 2 years left after this season out of all those guys. But, again, 2 years. Brewers, they could surprise us like they did Josh Hader and trade Peralta. That would be the most unexpected of all trades, I would probably say. Based on how good that team has been, I wouldn't do it. Cardinals, Donovan comes to mind as everybody wants this player. If somebody overwhelms, could it happen? Type of possibility. Cardinals also have Arenado. That's not a surprise. Cubs, they ain't trading anything off their major league roster. Diamondbacks, I don't think there's any way they move Carroll or Marte. Those would be the only unexpected pieces that I would say that the Diamondbacks could even move. That's not going to happen. But I do expect Gallen, Kelly, Naylor, and Suarez all to be traded. Dodgers, they're not really going to trade anything off their big league club. Giants, same thing. Guardians with Quan. I think there's enough noise, enough smoke, there could be fire. Clase, I think, is more likely than even Quan, obviously. Mariners, they don't have anybody besides maybe Logan Gilbert or one of their starting pitchers that they could move for a big trade. But I don't really see that happening either at the deadline. Cubby, paying for relief pitchers almost always backfire. Talking free agency, rather trade for good relief pitchers and piece it together like the Rangers and Cubs have done. Well, they did it cheaply. Heal. The Rays are like the Amish with a few people and some tools when they can rebuild anything. They are really good. They've done it a number of different ways. Marlins. Yuri Perez would be the surprise along with Stowers. Unlikely. I'm not going to throw my dart at it. Mets. They have the assets to get the big piece. Nationals, Gore would be the one. Orioles, we talked in our live earlier today about Adley Rutschman, probably this offseason, but at the deadline, I don't see that happening. I've heard a couple of different reports about teams at least kicking the tires on Gunnar Henderson. That's never happening, period. Padres, we talked about Cease. I don't think they would move Machado. I think that if they could get somebody to take Bogarts, they would do it. But again, all those guys have no trade clauses. Taj went from trade target to optioned. Honestly, I still think he's a trade target for somebody because they're going to want the controllable starter. So, for instance, the Braves are not a buyer at this deadline. But for a controllable player, like a Taj Bradley, they immediately put him in the rotation, figure out his issues, and go into next year with him in their rotation. They can allow him to, figure things out at the major league level, where a team like the Rays can't afford that as they're in the wild card race. Phillies, they're not trading any of their big pieces. Pirates, Skeens is not going to be traded. Way too valuable. There's nobody that could make a decent trade besides the Dodgers. That's going to wait a couple of years. Keller will be moved. Bednar will be moved. IKF will be moved. Pham will be moved. I do think there's a good chance Hayes goes. Reynolds could go. Yeah. But I don't think there's any big surprises there. Rangers, I don't think they trade any of their big pieces. Rays, we talked about Diaz already. Rasmussen could be a surprise, but not a huge one. Reds, I don't think they're shaking things up. Red Sox, they're going to buy a little bit here, but they're not going to trade any of their big assets. Jarren Duran could be the surprise, I suppose, if they're getting a Joe Ryan. But I'd say Ryan would be the bigger piece in that deal. That would be the bigger surprise. Rockies, Goodman, I suppose, but again, not a huge surprise, not a huge piece that would be traded compared to some of the others. Royals, they're not trading Bobby Witt, obviously. Nobody else really registers on that level. Tigers are buyers, not sellers. Twins, Joe Ryan. Byron Bucks. Ooh. If they had a course correction there in Minnesota, talked to Byron Buxton and found a way to get him on a contending team, that would be an absolute unexpected deal. Robert certainly playing a lot better. He's got a good chance to move to Phillies, Astros, teams along those lines. Yankees aren't trading anything from their team. So if I had to throw my dart at one of these clubs for an unexpected name, Quan, Gore, I'll say one of those two moves, not both. That'll be my dart. Are the Yankees in on Cease? They are. John Heyman reporting that 4 teams were in on him specifically, but that more teams were added to the race since he had gotten his information. Hazen has to know the Dbacks are cooked. He does, but guess he waits until next week. He is adamant about not selling. At least that was his stance at the All-Star break, and even before that. He never wants to sell. He always wants to try to compete for the wild card. They still have an outside chance to the wild card, don't get me wrong, but it's highly unrealistic. This team has not played great baseball. They get swept by the Astros. It's not looking good. But they do have some really high-value pieces here at the deadline, and almost all of them are expirings. Why not flip them for more controllable assets? That would be kind of the buy and sell, if you will, if you're Hazen. That would make it worth it. Bubic to the Astros makes a lot of sense. It does. I like that move. Got a year left to control after this year. I think they could actually afford to keep him long-term as well. Not a bad call there, Heel. I like that one. All right, let's go ahead and make a couple of trades, and then we'll call it an evening. With what we did this afternoon, the Yandy Diaz trade to the Rangers, I think would be an interesting one. Let's go something a little bit different, though, this evening. We've done a lot of Duran trades. We've done a lot of, Rangers trades in general. Let's start with a different team, though. I want to start with the Philadelphia Phillies. They need center field. They need bullpen still. Mullins, I hear for them. Robert, I hear as well. Buxton, but I don't think he moves. He'd be a great answer in center field for them. Other center fielders, I've even heard Kwan in relation to the Phillies as well. Kwan would be an interesting one. In fact, let's do that one. Kwan to the Phillies. 2 borderline playoff teams or playoff teams. Phillies, I think, are going to get in there at the borderline one. It's the Guardians are the borderline. But what would the return be? I think you'd have to include Justin Crawford in this deal. Painter, Miller, I think you could skip both of those. I think Mick Abel would have to be in this deal. Burkhalter. How close are we? 28. We need another 19. You go Tate, perhaps. That'd be a really good trade for the Guardians. Phillies. Is there another arm that you could throw in this deal? Expiring, something along those lines if you're the Guardians? Bieber, no. Eunice could help a little bit here. Sewald, nah. Lane Thomas wouldn't be the worst move. Say they go with Jakob Eunice, gives them a long relief option out of the bullpen. And then the Phillies throw in another piece around $4 million. Hendry Mendez. Actually, let's go with Nori since he's younger. Would I do this trade if I was the Guardians? Yes. Absolutely. Phillies make this offer, I say yes immediately. If I'm the Phillies, do I do this for Kwan and a long reliever? Crawford, I'd be fine giving up in this deal. Burkhalter, I'm fine. Abel, I'm fine. Nori, I'm fine. Giving up Tate, though, is the future catcher of the organization. That would be a tough one to part with. I'm not sure I would do this if I'm Philadelphia. But it's darn close. If I'm Dombrowski, I don't give a dang about the prospects. Speaking as a normal front office executive, I'd probably care more about the prospects. But Dombrowski runs the team, so this trade would probably happen. All right, try to catch up on a few of these other comments. Since 27 may not happen, then wonder if that makes it more likely to move guys signed through 27. I don't think that'll have much of an impact until we get closer to the deadline of that CBA. I don't think it's going to impact things at this deadline. I don't think it's going to impact the winter meetings too much. I do think we'll hear a lot of talk about it. I think we'll hear a lot of talk about the salary cap. I do think that'll impact contracts to a certain degree from teams that might be willing to go into the tax in certain scenarios, but might want to wait until they find out what the future's going to hold. And so it might hold off them signing a guy or two at the top end. We can scrap Buxton off. He ain't moving. Absolutely agree with that one. He's got the no trade. He loves it, Minnesota. Said at the All-Star game he's not moving. Falvey said as much as well. Minnesota's in love with the player as well. He just fits so well in Minnesota. But if for some reason the dismantling of the Twins changed things for Buxton, and said, hey, I'm going to be here for the next wave of Twins players, and we're going to be not very competitive for a couple of years here, and then my contract's going to basically be over and my career is basically going to be gone in Minnesota. If at that point, say at the deadline, they trade Joe Ryan, Duran, Jax, Castro, Bader, and we're starting to hear rumors around Carlos Correa, then I could see a deal where Buxton says, all right, just get me out of here. I want to play for a competitive team. At that point, I could see it, but until all that happens, that's a lot of dominoes. Until all that happens, I would say Buxton is firmly in Minnesota by the end of the season. Cabino, 16 years since the last New York Yankees championship. Would think Cashman would go big. This year is wide open in the American League. He will go big, absolutely. Will you go live on deadline day, Sean? Absolutely we will. We'll be live at 8 o'clock in the morning on deadline day. We'll go through at least 5 in the afternoon. So early in the morning, we're going to break down every single rumor as they happen live on the air. So make sure you turn on those alerts, hit that subscribe button, like the video, join us. We're going to post a bunch of videos leading up to the deadline as well, keeping you guys updated on everything as we possibly can. All right. Heel, to be honest, I think Buxton's just afraid he will get traded to the Rockies. Well, he's got the no trade, so he doesn't have to worry about that. But I mean, like, he would be able to pick a destination if he wanted to. Say the Rangers decided, hey, we want to bring in Buxton to be our center fielder along with Evan Carter. I could see that being a nice platoon out there, and then have Buxton, play the field or be the DH whenever you have Evan Carter out there. Upgrading 2 spots at once with Buxton, that could be a nice option. If they got to that point and Buxton was made available, I think the Rangers would be one of the teams calling. I think the Phillies would be in there for him. I think the Astros would be in there as well. I think even to a lesser extent the Braves would be, because they need help in left field. But we'll see what they do here at the deadline. If the Twins decide to sell that much off their team, then we could have the conversation around Buxton. But right now it's a little bit premature. Hill, will you be covering the World Baseball Classic? It'd be cool if you did next year. Haven't decided on that one yet. We do cover the winter meetings. We'll cover, the entire offseason. We did pretty much a live, every weekday, even on the weekends, even sometimes, especially around the winter meetings. We really covered, went all the way through the start of the season, took a little bit of a hiatus in April and early May, and we're back. We're going to be live every single day with you guys through the trade deadline, probably through August and into September as well, and then as we get to the playoffs, we might be doing some games with you guys here at the Upside. So be sure to hit that like, subscribe, join us every single evening around 9:45, and we'll keep you guys updated around the winter meetings. Around the trade deadline. One thing we hadn't done yet that I told you guys we would do, and that's update our power rankings. So let me get that pulled up real quick. I know you guys were probably waiting for that one earlier, so let's go ahead and get into that one. Let me add a column. Today is, the 23rd? So this is post All-Star break power rankings. We'll start at the bottom. Rockies have played really good baseball. I think the Nationals have played really poor. Do they flip here? White Sox, they played decent baseball as well. A's have not. Pirates haven't played good either. But I think the Nationals have just been that poor. I'm going to move them all the way to the bottom. Nationals go to the very bottom for the first time. Now, the Rockies have played better, but they're not a great team. A's are in this conversation, but they have a very bright future, and Kurtz is absolutely great. Pirates just played really well against the Tigers. White Sox played really well against the Rays. I'll go ahead and give those a bump for this week for now, because that pitching is really going to cost the A's as we go into August. Home runs all over the place out there in Sacramento. But this is about as high as I can move the Rockies because they are not a good team. They are getting some nice improvement out of some of their young players finally. Beek, one of the two. Not sure how to pronounce his name, but the outfielder, he's starting to turn into a real player. Pirates have not played well for a consistent period of time, but they did play well this week. Do I put the White Sox? Yeah, I'll put the White Sox here because they played lesser competition in the Rays. And then I'll put the Pirates. I think they're still all pretty much in the bottom 5, though. Braves have done nothing to improve their spot for me. If it'll take the V, come on. There it goes. Marlins have played decent baseball, though. They're going to probably bump just a hair. Orioles, struggles. Royals, 5-5. Guardians played really good baseball. Twins have not. So I'm thinking we bump down the Orioles here first. That fits. 23. Twins are in the conversation here. Diamondbacks are in the conversation here. Cardinals are going to fall pretty far. Marlins are playing decent baseball. I think they're going to jump up into the top 20 here, or close to it. Do the Cardinals really fall this far, though? Not quite this far. So, I'm going to put the Twins next. Royals, they opened up a can on the Cubbies. They're playing a little bit better-ish. Cardinals, I'm really tempted to have them drop this far, but still got the Diamondbacks in this range. Let's go ahead and put the... I'm going to go ahead and put the Cardinals because they played that poorly. Sorry, Sarah. I'll put the D-backs right here. Marlins are playing decent baseball. They probably won't stay above them next week, but got to give them credit for what they've done leading up to the deadline. And then, of course, they'll trade away all their good players, and then we'll drop the Marlins back down quite a bit again. Angels got to be in this range. Reds have got to be in this range. Royals got to be in this range. I'm going to put the Reds. No. I'm going to put... Where are the Angels at? 4 and 6. I'm leaning Angels still. Let's do that. Angels. Guardians have played well. They bump up probably into this range where the Cardinals were. Royals pretty much fit right in this same spot with the Angels. They're two very similar teams, to me at least. I think you put the Reds. No. The Rays, with their struggles against the White Sox, still pretty much right there. He'll want to know something funny. I played one of those tour games in 23 where you take a screenshot of whatever team you make. That's the team you pick to get the World Series, and you got the Rangers. That's cool. I said to myself, I wish the and the rest is history. That's true. I think this is probably the spot for the Reds. The Giants, 3-7. They have not played great baseball though. They were helped out by facing the Braves. Honestly, I'm going to put the Giants 16. I think the Reds, Guardians is about right there. Okay. Getting into the top 13 here. Ups and downs for the Padres. Lost a couple of games against the Marlins. Not horrible. They were on the road, so, it is what it is. I don't think they're necessarily moving up too far either. Astros played really good baseball, even with the injury to Paredes. Dodgers continue to have their issues. Tigers will certainly be dropping with their issues over the last couple of weeks. But I don't think they dropped this far for sure. Mariners have had their difficulties. They're going to stay right around this range. Red Sox had their difficulties since the break. They had that 10-game win streak and have certainly had their difficulties since. The Mets, 6-4. I think this is still pretty much Padres territory right here, though. I think the Red Sox with their swoon drop a little bit here. With how good the Rangers are playing, Mariners kind of treading water. I think I'm going to keep the Mariners here. So the Rangers do move back into the top 10. Brewers will be moving up. Any other droppers? Yankees 5-5. Kind of a mixed bag for them. It's not a true number one this week. There's not a team that's far and away the best team in baseball right now. I think the Dodgers, even with their issues, are still just as good of a case as any of these other teams to be labeled as that best team. Do I put the Mets here? Do I put the Rangers here? Do I put the Yankees here? Do I put the Tigers here? Rangers did just take care of business against them, but do they really drop 8 spots? I'm kind of leaning Tigers because they have played that poorly. And I don't really see them. To me, this is more about, regression to the mean. Their performance dictating them coming back to the pack here. So I'm going to drop the Tigers to 10. Now, the trade deadline could change things, but the pitching staff's regressed. The offense isn't nearly as good. And they've kind of been exploited a little bit. We see the flaws. The seams are showing. I'll go ahead and put the Rangers at 9. Tarek Skubal being the reason they're not dropping further. Do I flip the Yankees and Mets? I think I do. The top 5 is easy to make. I think the question is where do they good? Or where do they go? Honestly, I think anybody in this top 10, you could kind of jumble around a little bit. Brewers are certainly going to be climbing here. Gray will be a weapon. Welcome in, Mark. I was wondering if you were coming in today. Appreciate you joining us. I think I will be flipping the Yankees and Mets. Black Mantis, welcome in. No way Rangers over Detroit. Rangers need to show more, in my opinion. They had a good, 2 weeks? They've had a good month. The Rangers have basically been playing really good baseball for, I want to say, a little over 4 weeks now. Their offense certainly figured things out at the beginning of June. Well, right at the end of May, really, is when Marcus Semien started figuring out, and that's when the team started to turn around offensively. They still had their, sputters every now and again in the beginning of June, but they've been doing pretty well since then. Since the All-Star break, everybody's had their issues, but we'll see how this series goes against Atlanta. They should wake up all their bats against Atlanta. But over the Tigers, you're talking about a team that lost 4 straight going into the break. Out of the break, they've only won 1 game. They got swept by Pittsburgh. The only game they won was Sunday Night Baseball. Skubal basically left with a no decision, and they're able to pull it out late against a really good bullpen in Texas. I'll give them credit for that win. But they have not played good baseball in that same 2-3 weeks. And I think the issues that we see during this period of time are not just, hey, they had a bad 2 or 3 weeks, they're going to go right back to being the best team in baseball. They haven't been that for a period of time now. Blue Jays have been one of the best teams in baseball for the last 50 games. They're going to be going up here. Brewers are going to go up here. Mets are going to go up just a little. Yeah, they got swept before the All-Star break as well by the Mariners. The Tigers have had a rough stretch here, and I don't see them pulling out of this tailspin before the deadline for sure. They got, a 4-game series against the Blue Jays, I think, coming up? I think it's who they play next. Yeah, they play Toronto. Toronto's a much better team right now. I told you that, guys, they're the hottest team in baseball the last 50 plus. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put the Yankees flopping with the Mets here. Thought they were interchangeable when we did them right at the All-Star break. I think they're interchangeable again at this point. Brewers are playing really strong baseball. Do I move them into the top 5? I think the Blue Jays have a chance to go up to number 1. Phillies are in that range. Cubs, they had a real opportunity against the Royals and squandered it. But they showed the flaws. They know where they need to improve. Pitching. Get pitchers. Get a starting pitcher that you can take the ball in game 4, but most importantly, get an ace. Find one. Dylan Cease, wherever you have to go. Texas needs 1 bat in Bednar or Duran, and they will be a serious World Series contender. I think with their pitching staff right now, they're a serious playoff contender. I think as currently constructed, they're a wild card team. If they get Bednar or Duran without adding a bat, I think they get to the ALCS. Remember, my prediction before the season was the Rangers get to the World Series. We thought the offense was going to be the reason why, but obviously that wasn't correct. We thought the pitching might lag behind. That certainly hasn't been correct. They've been the best pitching staff in the game. Both rotation and bullpen. Their one weakness has been the 9th inning and just overusing it. That bullpen because of the poor offensive production, having to play so many close games. Adding a bat like Yandy Diaz would go a long way, I think. Josh Naylor. Those are the names I'm thinking of at the deadline for the Rangers. If you go big, I would love to see something like Austin Riley or Matt Olson. That's not going to happen, but I would love a bat like that to go to Texas. Brewers are top 5, I will agree. Have I made any money off of YouTube? How do I put this? A little bit. I've made some, but nothing to quit my day job. Certainly nothing to even take off a week for my day job. Do this mainly for fun. I enjoy talking baseball, trades. My dream job as a kid was to be the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, Texas Rangers, Dallas Stars. And I love talking sports with my dad, but no longer live at home, so I get to talk sports with you guys. And when I go home to see the folks, we talk sports still. So always enjoyed talking trades, those kinds of things. As an Astros fan, the Rangers are no joke. If the hitting stays on track, they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs. Right there with the Astros. Astros have played a lot better than expected. That pitching staff, I wondered about their performance going into the year. They've certainly played well above their expectation. That offense, with the injuries they've had, again, same thing. They just keep finding ways to win. Now, they're missing the top-end talent that'll help them in October. You got to hope those guys get healthy, because once you get to October, I think that's when the games get a little tighter, and that's where the difference in not having Garrett Cole, not having a Yordan Alvarez, a Kyle Tucker, and Alex Bregman start to show. So you're going to have Paredes come back. You're going to have Alvarez come back, but we shall see. Not yet. Engaged, but not married yet. Got to make more money first. Got to be able to afford the wedding, my guy. I think we've been engaged for 2 years? Something like that. Anyway, let's finish off these rankings. Like I said, Mets, Yankees, pretty much interchangeable. We're moving up the Brewers into the top 6 here. Tigers are moving out. Dodgers are flexible. I think they're still really good, though. Even with their injuries, they're still like right there for one of the best records in baseball this year. But those teams are all bunched around 60 wins. I mean, how many teams have 60, 61 wins right now? 3 in the American League. 3 in the National League. And how many have 59? 1. And another one has 58. Everybody's bunching up right now. No team is really separating here. That's why the deadline could be a big shift in where these teams ultimately end up. So, looking at this, do we put the Brewers above the Astros? I would say yes. So the Astros, do we put them above the Blue Jays? No. Do we put them above the Cubs? Currently, I'd be tempted to say yes, because the Cubs just kind of squandered an opportunity against the Royals, and Astros are making do with what they got. Duct tape, electrical tape, a paper clip, and a bar of chocolate like MacGyver them. They're kind of MacGyvering their ways to victories right now. But I'd say they're squeezing every bit of potential out of that roster that they have. So I'm still leaning put the Astros at 6. If they have another week like they did this week, though, I got to move them up. But for now, I'm going to leave them where they are, just outside of the top 5. Cubs pretty much drop one spot to me because the Brewers and Blue Jays are better at this point until the Cubs add that starting pitcher, add bullpen help. So I think the Cubs go down to 5. So we got top 4 of Dodgers, Phillies, Blue Jays, and Brewers. So far, the consistency has been there for the Brewers. Their win streak has been great. Where do we put them, though? Do we drop the Dodgers out of the top spot overall? Well, let me know in the chat. Would you drop the Dodgers from number 1? Understanding that they do have injury issues. Understanding that they do have blowing leads in the bullpen. But yet, look where their record is. Even with those things considered. And getting swept by the Brewers, who they, for some reason, can't figure out. They're 4-6 in the last 10. Another reason why I would drop them. But do you drop them? You roll the ball out right now. Do the Blue Jays beat them in a series? I'd be leaning towards yes. But Shohei, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, that's a heck of a 1-2-3. And Glass now is really good right now for the Dodgers. I think I do drop the Dodgers out of the top spot. I think the Blue Jays I'm going to put above them. Do we put the Phillies above the Dodgers? I'm leaning towards no. Do we put the Brewers above the Dodgers? I mean, they are able to handle the Dodgers, don't get me wrong. So on paper, head-to-head, you would say, hey, Brewers easily go above them. But I mean, if they're in the postseason, I would say the Dodgers have the better talent overall and should be able to handle the Brewers. But they just got swept by them. And they, for some reason, continue to struggle with them in the regular season. I'm going to go ahead temporarily, going to drop the Dodgers down to 4. It's going to upset LA fans, but we'll go with that one. Actually, no. I'm still putting the Phillies at 4 because I think the Dodgers are a little better. Dodgers go to 3. Brewers to 2. And then that would mean the Blue Jays go to 1. It's scary to me how the Astros AAA roster is basically better than some MLB rosters. True. I would drop them. They ain't playing, feeling like a juggernaut they're supposed to. Yes, but I mean, even with them not feeling like a juggernaut, they're still within a game of being the best record in baseball right now. Even when they're not playing well, they're still at the best level in the game. That's what I'm saying. The Dodgers have all these issues, and yet they're still right there. Isn't that a mark of a good team? We talk about the Chiefs, not being able to score during the regular season, having issues, not being able to be the high-flying Chiefs that they used to be. And then what do? They just keep grinding out victories. Yes, you throw the refs in there, whatever. But good teams just know how to win. The Patriots with Brady. Good teams find a way to get the W. Same thing with the Astros right now. They find a way to win. But I think the Dodgers will be probably right back on top here in the next week or two. But for now, I'll go ahead and drop them down to 3. I'll give credit to the Brewers for what they've been able to do recently. Same thing for the Blue Jays. So we'll drop the Dodgers to 3. I feel comfortable with that one. What's crazier here is that if you look at the Astros IL, they got a whole damn roster who could compete for a playoff spot with the players on that list. They could probably win a playoff series with the players they have on that list. Brewers swept them, so yes, Dodgers' bad day is almost most teams' good week. Very true. Dodgers might be a victim of their own expectations, but either way, they did lose 6 streak, and it's only fair to drop them for now. That's kind of my thoughts as well. So there's our power rankings. For those of you who stuck around till the end of this live for us to be able to do it, almost forgot to do this in our Wednesday show, but ultimately, Rockies had a good week. They bump up a little bit. Nationals find themselves in the cellar. A's, Rockies, White Sox, and Pirates, the bottom 5. Braves at 25. Orioles, Twins, Cardinals were a big dropper, as well the Diamondbacks. Marlins found their way into the top 20 with a strong play over the past few weeks. Angels pretty much in that standing pat mode, just outside of playoff contention, but having a good year overall. Same kind of a thing with the Royals playing a little bit better, taking a few games from the Cubs. Rays just trying to tread water through the deadline and figure out what they're going to have after this. Giants not playing well. They finally get Verlander a win, but they're still 3-7 in their last 10 and look like the only team that has a chance to even catch the Padres besides possibly the Reds, but I doubt they do. But If the Reds do catch the Padres, that'd be the last team I'd think has a chance to get that final wild card spot. Guardians playing really well, but I'm still not a believer in the team overall. Padres, I think, are pretty solidly in that number 6 spot in the wild card race. Even if they do trade Dylan Cease for future pieces, I think they're still pretty much right where they are. Doesn't make them better, doesn't make them worse. I think they're going to be right there. Red Sox, a poor week. They drop. Mariners, a so-so week. They stay about the same spot. Tigers, we talked about how poor they've been even before the All-Star break. They dropped precipitously. Rangers have been playing really strong baseball for about 5 weeks now. Pitching staff still at the best in the game. And their offense is finally coming around. They jump up a little bit into the top 10. Yankees and Mets flip-flop once again. Astros, with the injuries that they have and the great performance that they have with the fill-ins that they got right now, they stay in their spot, but likely will drop if they have some faltering this next week. Cubs, they drop a little bit after the they continue to show their needs right now in that starting staff. The top 5. Cubs at 5. We just talked about why. Phillies at 4, just beneath the Dodgers. They're playing solid baseball, but they need to fill out the rest of that bullpen, get Robertson in there, get a little bit better performance there, and then that center field is still a biggest blight on that lineup. They need to solve that issue. Dodgers drop mainly because the sky-high performance of the Blue Jays and the Brewers right now. They've earned it. Dodgers, though, are right there among the best teams in baseball. Brewers, 11-game win streak came to an end. They come right back out and win another one against a very solid Mariners team. And then the Blue Jays continue to just stick it to the Yankees and end up number 1 this week. Good list. Thank you, Black Mantis. Thank you, Mark. Heel, Nate Lowe will get moved. By the way, there's no way he stays in D.C. I think he will be moved, yes, but I don't think it'll be at the deadline. He's not having a great year. He's having an okay year, but when you look at the pieces that even D.C. has to trade, Josh Bell is the more valuable commodity. Lower cost contract. Much better production recently. Same style of hitter. Except Bell offers more power than Lowe does. He's easily going to be able to be moved. Now, defense obviously is on Nate Lowe's side over Bell, but with the contract, if he performs better in the second half this year, I think he would be an easy piece to be moved at or in the offseason as a pure rental. So we'll see where he goes, but I think the deadline, I would put it at less than 50% Lowe moves at the deadline. I think it's more likely he moves in the offseason, and the Nationals spend big in free agency and try to add a big piece like a Pete Alonso there to kind of jumpstart their contention in the NL East once again. Mark, would Langford and Walcott and Bratt get you Miller from the A's? That'd be a little bit of an overpay. A lot of an overpay. I think you'd only have to include one of Langford or Walcott. But again, they're looking for starting pitching. They're not necessarily looking for position players. They don't really have a fit for Langford in their outfield. I'm sure they'd love to have him, but they really don't need Langford. Walcott, they could obviously use as probably a third baseman. They got Muncy that they have bright future for. Wilson already, Jacob Wilson at shortstop, pretty much set there. But if you're going for Miller, you could probably do Rosario, Cole Drake, Bratt, and then that would get you really close to a deal. But I think teams like the Phillies, the Mets, the Cubs, the Tigers, the Yankees, the Blue Jays are all going to be in there for his services, and there's no reason to pay that high of a price for Mason Miller when you can go get a Bednar or a Duran for a much cheaper cost. I swear every Astros prospect is secret, Carlos, from the Benchwarmers, minus the two-way ability. Yeah, the Astros just seem to figure things out, I will say that. But I do like Mason Miller. He was a trade target for me last year at the deadline for the Rangers, but I don't think that's a realistic target this year. Teodo been bad, might move him while you can. Teodo, I think, just needs more time. I think he's going to be just fine, but I think the second half is going to be big for him in his future. The Rangers have so many pitching prospects that are having good years this year. He's going to have to put up or shut up to be able to stay where he's at in the prospect rankings. I thought I spoiled my girlfriend. You would spoil the athletics. Yeah, that's true. All right. Appreciate you guys joining us this evening. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for all those of you who have subscribed over the last 24 hours. We've gained, I think, 15 new subscribers in the last 24 hours. Really do appreciate you guys' support and joining us here at the Upside. We'll be live again tomorrow around 9:45 in the evening. Thank you guys so much for making this so much more enjoyable every day that you guys interact with us in the chat. It makes it so much fun to talk about trades. The ideas of where teams stand, rankings, where they're going to go, how the playoffs are going to look. We'll update kind of how playoffs are going to look after the trade deadline. Kind of gave you our predictions right now where they stand versus, at the deadline we'll see how much they change. But curious to see which teams ultimately prove to be the most aggressive. Yes, everybody says they're going to be aggressive. Every team wants a certain player, but who's ultimately willing to pony up the price to be able to get the deal done? It's going to be an interesting week. I do expect a trade to happen tomorrow to kind of kick things off for trade deadline season. And then before the end of the weekend, we should have our first really big trade. So keep your eyes peeled. There's going to be a lot of notifications heading your way from a lot of different sources. Make sure you have the Upside as one of them. And join us every single night around 9:45 to discuss the latest around the MLB trade deadline. Thank you guys for joining us. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow night.